I'm just trying to see if I go live here. Okay, so we are now live, and welcome to an abbreviated edition of the Dues Hockey Hotline. I am your host, Beyond716, one of your co-hosts. You may be wondering where Matt Diegert is today. Unfortunately, Matt's having some internet issues that can't be avoided. I guess it's an outage very similar to the Sabres power play, as we're still waiting for the first power play goal of the 2024 season for our Buffalo Sabres. Maybe it's fitting. Maybe it's something sent from the Sabres above, so to speak. So I digress, but we're hoping that Matt will join us soon. And we do apologize for the late start time today, as we were hoping to get that resolved. But alas, we are here, and we wanted to put some content up for us Sabre fans as we march on through the season. So again, welcome to episode 2 of the Do Hockey's Hotline. And again, every Saturday going forward, you will see us to discuss Sabres hockey. And we want you to join us. We have our chat. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear any questions that you have about the Sabres. And please like and subscribe to Do Champions, as we have excellent shows, especially if you're a Bills fan right now. We're in the heat of the season. Myself and Whittle, we do our show Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Coast to coast. It's an honor to do those shows with Whittle. So Matt and Student do great. They're manageable. We have other great shows here on the Do Champions network. So find us on YouTube and all the social media outlets, Facebook and Instagram. Please give us a follow. We really appreciate it. So where do we begin with the Buffalo Sabres right now? Well, it's one of those things where you always try to tell yourself, I feel like the Sabres remind me as a fan right now of batteries in new iPhones. And where do I go with this, right? Every year they come out with an update, right? New iPhone comes out, and they're always taunting and lauding about their new battery. It's going to have extra battery life, and it's going to be even better than before. And as a Sabre fan of the last, I would say really since Jack Eichel's draft, right? Since we did the infamous tank for Connor McDavid, and now you speed up 9 years later. And I feel like every year I'll tell some maybe casual hockey fans or maybe other fans of teams, this Buffalo Sabre team is going to build a winner. We got all these draft picks. We're building a great young team. We're building a great young core. We got some possible franchise-changing players, Rasmus Dahlin, Jack Eichel, Owen Power, just to name a few. And you're just kind of waiting. And then you get your new iPhone. And then you plug it in, you run it through a normal course for a couple days. And then you realize battery life's still the same. Still the same. It goes down quick. All of a sudden you're at 20% and you're recharging it again. There's really not much difference. That's what the Sabres feel like to me every year as a Sabre fan lately. It's just a vicious cycle every year. We start the season, and we hired Lindy Ruff this year, and we really fix our third and fourth line. We get tougher. We build the kind of team that we're used to seeing with Lindy Ruff. And with his experience and his pedigree, especially in Western New York, and all the success that Lindy have, and you look at the young core that the Sabres have, and you think to yourself, hey, Don Granado did a great job of setting us up close to the playoffs. Lindy could be the guy to put us right over the top. And we're all excited. We see the preseason. And there's one lesson we can all learn after last year, or after every year. I want every Sabres fan to understand this. Do not put anything into the preseason. Don't worry about the results. Don't worry about the optics. Don't worry about anything. It doesn't matter. It never matters. Okay, we learned that this year. The Sabres look great in the preseason. Then we go to the Stadium Series. We played really well in the first game against the Devils. Second game, not so much. Devin Levi almost tried to steal it for us. Didn't get any points out of that series. We come home against the Kings, play an excellent game. But Samuelson takes a late penalty. You can say what you want, whether it's controversial or not, but the Kings found a way to win. And those are the things that we're not doing on our side. We're not grinding out those overtime lost points as much as we need to. We're not doing the little things late that playoff teams do. Teams like the Penguins. You see the Penguins and you see the Capitals, right? You see even though they're not the same teams that they used to be. They find ways, and and how about just this week against the Pittsburgh Penguins? Sabres have a 3-1 lead. They're looking great to start the game. And what happens? The Penguins just grind away. The experienced guys, the Crosby, Malkin, all those guys, they find a way to come back, and the Sabres fall short. Yes, we got a point, great. But I think the one that kind of broke the camel's back was Thursday night against Columbus. Now, to Columbus's credit, they played really well, right? This is a team that's playing with a very heavy heart now, of course, after the terrible loss of Johnny Gaudreau. And maybe that was part of it, and the Sabres are coming off a back-to-back. But if any of you didn't listen to Andrew Peters and Craig Rivet yesterday, I strongly recommend that you do, because they tell it like it is. And sometimes I don't always agree with them on every take, but I really think they hit on a lot of great points about this team right now and where we stand. Sabres didn't check well. The Sabres it was just one of those just sloppy games all around. Yeah, they had some moments, but Levi wasn't great yesterday after he played 2 strong games. I was hoping maybe he would take a huge step yesterday, but again, the Sabres are just too inconsistent across the board. Sometimes the effort's there, sometimes it's not. And you can feel the frustration bubbling in the Sabres fan base. And it's understandable, folks. It really, really is. And usually you could sit here and say, okay, they're 1-4-1. We're only 6 games in. And if you look at the standings, a lot of these teams are imbalanced. You have the Devils playing with 7 games so far. You got some teams that only played 3 games. So you really can't really pay attention to where the Sabres are in the standings or anything like that. And a lot of times, if you look at history over many years in hockey, October brings some very unusual and unexpected results. So we still have that to hang our hat on, so to speak. And we know with Lindy Ruff, it's just going to take some time for these changes to be implemented, to change a culture. It's very difficult in hockey to change a culture. It doesn't happen overnight. But where are the problems with the Sabres? I mean, there's quite a few, right? Number one, I think the biggest problem with this team right now is, do the Sabres truly have a number one center? Now, Tage Thompson had the 47-goal year a couple of years ago. Last year he was injured. He had 29. And sometimes I feel like he would be better suited for the wing. And especially Dylan Cousins, number 24. Now, Dylan Cousins still is only 23. And yes, he's had a lot of shots on goal this year, but they just feel empty. His game doesn't feel like he doesn't feel like he's making a real impact so far. Now, you got to keep stressing it's early. And I know after this podcast, you're probably going to get tired of me saying it, but it really is true. But we need more out of Dylan Cousins. But if you really think about Cousins, and every time you see him in the World Juniors and he's lighting it up for a point a game or more, where's he playing? He's playing on the wing. Constantly, right? Now, I know the NHL is different, but I really think the Sabres need a bona fide number one center that can move other pieces around. Sabres have a lot of wingers in their system. Yuri Kulich scored a goal this week. That was good to see. But I'm not sure if he's the kind of center that would complement Dylan Cousins or not. It's funny, we need a playmaking center. Who did the Sabres have over the last several years who they drafted in the top 10 that makes excellent saucer passes all over the ice? Oh, yeah, it was Casey Middlestad. I'm sorry. We traded him for Bowen Byram. And that was a trade for me that I just was not a fan of. And I stand on that hill. Bowen Byram, 3 points so far, 2 shots on goal. I mean, just dreadful. Not really making the impact that we thought. So, I mean, Adams took a risk. I understood it, but it just felt like overkill to me on the defense for what we had. And the Sabres feel like it's not necessarily a talent issue. It's more of an allocation of the team issue. I go back to the Owen Power draft, and I still stand on this hill too. I still think we should take in Matty Beniers, even though Matty Beniers isn't really off to a hot start with Seattle. I think with the Sabres, he would have been a great fit, especially with a guy like Dylan Cousins. That would have been an excellent way to go. So there's a lot of bad to take so far, folks, and I get it. But I still strongly urge you, we still have I would say at least 10 to 12 games. Maybe Thanksgiving is the best mark to kind of really assess where this franchise is. So, what do the Sabres have coming up in the next week? Well, tonight they're in Chicago against the Phenom, Connor Bedard, and the Blackhawks. And listen, the Sabres better come strong tonight. The Blackhawks are playing. They're playing hard. They're trying to build an identity there with Bedard, and they have some other good veterans there on that team. So that's not going to be an easy game. And then we have abbreviated schedule next week. We have Dallas at home on Tuesday. The Sabres do come home. And then Saturday afternoon next week, we do have the Detroit Red Wings coming into town for a matinee. So a little lighter schedule coming up. So I look at these next two games here with Chicago and Dallas. We need minimum. I mean, I would love to see 3 points, but even two, we have to split minimum. Dallas is going to be a tough matchup at home. But again, veteran teams against a team like Dallas at home will find a way to grind out. Even if the Stars outplay the Sabres, you find a way to get that to overtime. You find a way to take advantage of this point system for losses. I'm not a big fan of it, but you just got to find a way to get more games to overtime. It cost the Sabres last year. It helped teams like the Islanders and some other teams like the Capitals. I think they had about 6 to 8 more points in that case. So the Sabres desperately need to find ways to do that. So what are the negatives so far? Well, there are plenty. I mean, there's absolute plenty. First of all, Jack Quinn, top 10 pick, scratched the other night. This is a vintage Lindy move, and I kind of like it. I think, Jack Quinn's been off to a really slow start, and you kind of knew when Lindy Ruff came in that one of our players, one of these guys, I thought it was going to be Peterka, personally, that was going to have a rough start under Lindy Ruff, and turns out to be Jack Quinn. He's the lucky winner so far, being sarcastic, but maybe him sitting down and watching from above will give him a little perspective and he can look back. I'm not going to say Zach Benson's a negative, but I just think he's a 19-year-old kid that's probably overwhelmed by the moment. He has 8 shots on goal. He works hard. He's on no points in 5 games. But again, it's early. But I wonder if we're just giving him more than he can handle right now. It's a lot to ask of a 19-year-old in this league. So we need more of Jack Quinn. I think Jack Quinn is a guy that's ready to take that step. We saw some signs last year. And of course, Dylan Cousins. And I would not be opposed to Lindy Ruff moving him to the 4th line, even just for a couple of games. For any of you older Sabre fans, you'll remember we did that with Miroslav Shatan in the 90s when the Sabres were in their cup run. And Miro responded. He came back and played really well after that. So I would not object to Lindy Ruff making that decision on a guy like Dylan Cousins. So there's a lot of negatives there in that sense. And some of the other players, you look at some of the analytics, Yoki Haru has actually played pretty well, and he's a guy that I've wanted off this team for a while, but to his credit, he's been playing much better this year. And listen, the Jordan Greenway line with McLeod, that's been an absolute surprise, and it seems like the Sabres may have found something there in the 3rd line. So that's a positive going forward. And so there are plenty of other positives here. I mean, I wouldn't say plenty, but there are some. I wouldn't call this a negative, but it's a concern. Rasmus Dahlin has 2 points in 6 games. He only has 11 shots on goal. That's not the Dahlin we know. And you wonder if he's nursing an injury. And Dahlin was just anointed captain. He may be feeling that extra pressure to maybe play through those injuries, but I hope the Sabres staff realizes this is October and the Sabres need to really take a perspective back, take a step back on that and say, hey, this is a long season. We got to get our captain right. So if he needs to sit down for a few games or so just to get right, just to feel better, I think you have to play the long game a little bit too. So I did worry about that a little bit with Dahlin and getting that captaincy. Would he put extra pressure on himself? We've seen that sometimes from players when they get that responsibility. But we just need Dahlin to be Dahlin. That's what he can't be trying to do way more he could do. So hopefully he settles in. And I'd like to see him get a goal or two soon just to kind of get things going in that respect, get his, quote, mojo back. So But Turk has had some really good moments. He does have 3 goals so far. Tage has been, yeah, he's been okay. Like he hasn't been great or bad, I think. And Tuck, even though Tuck has 6 points in 6 games, it doesn't feel like this team goes as Tuck goes, as far as I'm concerned. Like when Tuck is energized and he's doing his thing, I just feel like the team feeds off that. So would like to see more of that going forward. And I want to see a little bit more of Yuri Coolidge. So again, we have tonight. As far as the goaltending is concerned, it's been very up and down. Same story that this team has struggled with for a while. And Devin Levi is still a young goalie, and you wonder if he should go back to Rochester or not. I was hoping that he would take the bull by the horns. And this is a theory of mine that I'm not sure if it has if it does have merit, if it does have any credence at all, cadence at all, is when Devin Levi's been on this roster, I feel like UPL has struggled at times, and maybe it's a situation where Devin Levi he's supposed to be a franchise-changing defenseman, goalie, excuse me. He's supposed to be the guy, right? A franchise goalie. You wonder if UPL, even though he signed that contract, is looking over his shoulder a little bit. Maybe he's feeling a little bit of pressure from a Devin Levi, because this fan base. We've been calling for Devin Levi for a long time, it feels like. But we got to remember Devin Levi's still only 22 years old. I mean, this is still the youngest team in the league. And who does that fall on now? Like, what person in the Sabres organization? We're an organization that's desperate to make the playoffs. We're 13 years into a drought. We have so many good young players. But if you look at some of the better teams in the league, they have experience. They have guys that have been there. Who does that ultimately fall on? Well, none other than Kevyn Adams. And I feel like with Kevyn Adams, I can go on a rant for about an hour, right? So I think the first mistake the Sabres made, and I'm going to tell you why I think they did this. I kind of joke with my friends. I call them the Big Five, or there are teams from 3 states, Florida, Texas, and Vegas, that have been to, of the last 20 conference finalists in the last 5 years, 11 of them have come from these states. Why? Partly because they draft well. Of course, they're good ownerships and things like that, but they do have this thing called the tax advantage, right? For example, Dylan Cousins got paid, what, $7 million from the Sabres. If he was in Dallas, if he played for the Stars, maybe he gets 6, maybe just a shade over 6. And you may say, well, that's just $1 million. What's the difference, right? But if you look at maybe 10 contracts on that team, you save 800,000 here, you save 500,000 here, you save. Those teams in Florida and Texas do have an advantage where they can clean up about $6 to $7 million more of cap space to use on players. Okay, so if you look at it from the Sabres' point of view, what I think Adams and some of these teams, Montreal's tried it, some other teams have given it a shot, where they're signing their younger players longer contracts earlier, trying to save money against the cap because of their tax disadvantages that the teams in these other states have. Montreal did it with their core. They did it with Slavkowski. They did it with names escaping, right? Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. They've upped their core for all these years because Montreal has an absolute disadvantage. And if you've heard Thomas Vanek ever speak about it, he'll be the first to tell you. So the Sabres did the same with Samuelson. They did the same with Owen Power. They did the same with Dylan Cousins. But here's the problem with that for some of these teams. Have these guys really earned it? This is a team that hasn't had the success on the ice. We haven't had playoff runs. We haven't seen it. So we're giving out these 8-year contracts. Is it too soon? Now, a buddy of mine, Frank, who I've known for years, he loves the bridge, right? The bridge contracts. And it feels like those are almost out of style these days. You don't see a lot of bridge contracts. And you wonder if the Sabres should have done that with an Owen Power. And you may say to yourself, well, what does that signify, right? You, instead of signing a guy for $8 million, maybe you give Owen Power 5.5 for 3 to 4 years. Granted, the Sabres would have to worry about paying him in 4 or 5 years. But can Kevyn Adams really afford to worry about 4 to 5 years now when he can't get anything done right now? Right? So if you save yourself the money in the cap, it allows you even more cap room to go out and get that big player, that big veteran player this team desperately craves, like a Steven Stamkos and again, I don't even know if this guy was available, but those are the kind of players this team desperately needs. You put one of these guys on the team, and I'm telling you, it trickles down to the entire roster and puts everybody in better positions. I think that's what the Sabres are really lacking right now. I think there's just a little bit of roster. I wouldn't even call it mismanagement. It just feels like some. You don't see a lot of teams carry two defensemen with major, major contracts or try to have two franchise defensemen. It's usually one, and then there's good defensemen around them. And I think that's my issue with the Owen Power contract is that he may be a really good defenseman, but on this team, I think the amount of money we're paying him, I don't know if it's going to be maximized on this roster when you have Erasmus Dahlin. So, but we'll see. It's very early, but I know I'm kind of all over the place with that. But I think this kind of leads into what the issues are with the Sabres right now. It's not necessarily a talent issue, it's the way the roster is constructed. And I really do think this team needs a definite number one center, a guy, just if you know Nico Hischier on the Devils or Mark Scheifele on the Winnipeg Jets. Those are the kind of players this team needs, and I'm not sure if they're available somewhere. I'm not talking Connor McDavid, folks. Connor McDavid's a pipe dream. Okay, so we're not going down that road. We're talking realistic options for this franchise, and I just think that would put it all together. So there is a lot of negatives going on right now, and I totally understand it, Sabre fans. I totally understand the negativity. So it's something that on our Twitter, it's something that I would never argue with you on, but I still strongly recommend stay stay strong with this team. There's still you got to give Lindy Ruff some time, and this is something else that was brought up by Andrew Peters and Rivet. That was a good point that I didn't even think of. Lindy Ruff was not allowed to pick his assistants, so to speak, and to me that's an issue, right? So you brought in Lindy Ruff, and we heard from Kevin Adams, oh, it was an exhaustive search. We looked for 8 or 9 players or 8 or 9 coaches, but I truly do not believe him on that. I think the Sabres, and I wonder if it came from Pagula, who is still friendly with Lindy Ruff and has been known to still have conversations with Lindy Ruff. Lindy Ruff still lives in Western New York. That this was the plan all along, probably from even last year, to see if Lindy could revive the franchise, maybe get us in the right direction. But if you don't allow Lindy Ruff to have the assistants that he wants to implement his system, then what are we doing here, right? I know Seth Appert has been rumored to be in line for the next Sabre coach, and you've heard rumors that maybe Kevin Adams is going to even move up to president. But what has Kevin Adams done to earn that trust? What has he done to earn that absolute stability? Right? Kevin Adams should be absolutely on the hot seat right now if this team does not respond in the next month. If the Sabres really go south, like if I'm talking 3-12, 3-13, I think Kevin Adams should be axed. No questions asked. We already Don Granado was gone, so that excuse for him is gone. And I was actually sticking up for Adams a little bit for some of the inaction in the offseason of not getting a top 6. So we don't know if he's tried. These are things about GM speak and all that. We're not 100% sure what they try and what they don't try. So for us to sit here and criticize him without the knowledge, sometimes it's hard, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe Adams had a couple trades in the works, but there's some other players out there you look at, like a Sean Monahan. He's another center. He's another experienced guy. He went to Columbus. Would have been a nice fit for the Sabres. You put Monahan with Cousins, right? And then it moves a guy like Benson down maybe a little bit further so he can be in a better situation as he develops into that top 6 player that we're hoping he will be. But it's not too much on him as a 19-year-old kid. That would have made sense to me. Something like that. Give him a 2-year deal. You overpay him a little bit. That's fine. We have the cap room. So those are the kind of things I was hoping this team would do. So again, we're not going to do a full hour today, but I wanted to quickly go over just some of the analytics. I was looking at this team a little bit, and I'm starting to dip my toes in the water of analytics. And I am a believer of analytics, but again, I think there's a balance, right? There's some things that analytics can't completely gauge, but there are things that you could see that might give you some hope or maybe some trepidation about your team. So I was looking at some of the numbers for us, and they have this thing called expected goals for and expected goals against and things like that. So right now, our Corsi is 55.9%. So above 50%, what that means is the team's controlling the puck more often than not with the player in the situation. So 50% is norm. We're at 55.9. So there are some good signs there about 5-on-5, right? This is all 5-on-5 data that I am coming up with here. We have more high danger percentage options, 55.1. So we're doing okay there. Actual goals for, we have 14. Our expected is 14. So we're playing a little bit above ourselves 5-on-5. So you could see where the problem is, right? So we're doing a little bit better 5-on-5. So where's the problem? It's the power play, which we're 6 games in and we have exactly 0 power play goals. Major problem. Especially, we have to get more creative. We have to move the puck around more. Watch, if you saw Columbus Thursday night, skating hard, moving the puck around all over the place. The Sabres have to get more active on the power play, more assertive. I feel like there's guys just standing around there waiting for someone to make a play, and they have to find a way to get that going because no NHL team is going to survive with that. Not in today's NHL. Not a chance. So Lindy Ruff and the staff have to find a way to get through to these forwards, say, hey, let's get more active. Let's move that puck around. And I don't want to hear they're missing Jeff Skinner for that because Jeff Skinner wasn't a power play specialist. So that's not the issue. But we need guys like Tage Thompson. We need guys like Quinn. We need more guys, more bodies in front trying to get some greasy goals, so to speak. So there's a lot of things to work on. So again, we're going to see how that all works out. Is there a trade out there this early in the season to fix this? That's a tough ask. I mean, there's a lot of teams. It's funny, you look around the league and you hear Sabre fans, well, we can go after this guy or this guy. But a lot of these teams, when you look at them, they're in better positions than we are. So why would they trade to us, right? So it's just way too early in the season. I mean, Nashville's 0-4, folks. Nashville is 0-4. Supposed to be one of the best teams in the league. Colorado 1-4. They just finally won a game last night against the Anaheim Ducks. Detroit is 1-3. They were supposed to be challenging for playoff spot just like Buffalo. They're off to a slow start. Montreal is only 2-3. There's plenty of teams that are off to slow starts. So last year, perfect example, Edmonton 0-5. But what did Edmonton do? Okay. So they're 0-5, fired their head coach. Edmonton's not going to stand for that, right? And they get Knobloch and they come within an eyelash of winning the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, I know the Oilers are a much better built team than the Sabres, but this is where the whole Kevin Adams thing comes into play for me. We have to hold him accountable, right? This organization, this is not acceptable. We can't be like, oh, his team tries hard, good, pat on the back, great job. No, that's not good enough anymore. Not in professional sports. It's just not. And that's just a cold reality. These guys are paid an incredible amount of money. They're in the top 0.1% of their profession. Results are everything. So, and when you consider the Sabres have been struggling at the gate and the NHL revenue is driven off gate more than any of the big sports, TV money is important, but it's not everything like in football. Football, you could have empty arenas and your team is still making big money. Not in the NHL. That does not work that way. And we have a whole generation of Sabre fans that are younger that don't remember the glory days that we speak about. The party in the plaza, the Seymour Knox days of the Odd, when the Odd was a great place to see a game, and we had Dominic Hasek, and we had Tom Barrasso. I'm going way back, guys. Phil Housley, Dave Andrewchuk. Yeah, I'm old. I've seen those teams, and they were fun. And the Odd was a great place, and it was always full, always sold out. But you have a new generation of maybe fans 30 and under that really don't remember that. They have maybe some fuzzy memories of the Drury Briere years, which were great, but it didn't last that long. It was only a few years, and then we really fell off after that. So this organization is at a crossroads. They have to find a way to get into that Buffalo fan base and really ignite this city to get them back coming in. And so this is a very dangerous time. as an organization for the Sabres. So I'm hoping they get it back, and we're going to find out again. They got the Blackhawks tonight, and the Sabres do have, again, the Dallas Stars coming in next week. And then next Saturday, I will not be here next week on the air. Next week, I will be in Vegas, so I will be out, but Matt will be back and we'll be joined, I believe. I'm not sure who's going to be joining us, but please tune in next week. And we do really apologize for the technical difficulties. So we're gonna, so right now we're gonna probably wrap this show up here. We're about a half hour in, so we usually go an hour, but I wanted to speak with you guys about the Sabres. And again, if you're on Twitter, I mean, talk to us. We want to hear what you think about the Sabres. You are the reason we come on here, and I appreciate anybody listening right now or listens to us later on. So just hang in there, Sabre fans. It's been tough. It's frustrating. I completely understand it, but I strongly urge you, give this roster time. So I'm interested to see the response tonight. It's the first 3-game and 4-night stretch. And, again, I keep referencing Rive and Peters, but I think they're right. This is the youngest team in the league, and they look tired. And why? Now, I know they had the Stadium Series, but that hasn't affected the Devils. The Devils are 5-2. They also went to Prague. They're still playing good hockey. So I don't want to hear that as an excuse for the Sabres right now. It's just, they're going through transition, and Lindy Ruff, I'm sure, is a lot tougher on this team than others. But again, we just got to give it a little bit of time. But I would like to see Lindy send a few messages here. I'm okay with moving Cousins down to the 4th line. Let's move the McLeod line up to number 2. Let's give them a shot. I know some fans may think that's crazy, but why not? They've been, Greenway's a guy that can put the puck in the net, and I think he's earned it. I think you put the McLeod line up, move him up to 2nd, move Cousins down the 3rd line, send them a message. You're making $7 million, so what? Lindy Ruff wasn't here when he signed that contract. Send the message. Tell these guys, hey, I want more from you. And you do that because you know they could do better. That's really what it is. And we know this team can do better. But again, there's issues on the ice, and there's a big issue to me with Kevin Adams. And I just hope at some point him or the next GM looks at all these prospects we have and say, hey, it's time for us to overpay. It's time for us to get aggressive, and we have to find that the true number 1 center, or even number 2, to put this all together. So, okay, I'm going to wrap this show. We're a little bit a half hour in. So, again, thank you so much to everyone. And again, to Matt, look forward to next week. And we look forward to a great show coming up. And we're going to have more great content coming up on this show coming up. So we're just getting off the ground on this show. And I'm real excited about this venture with Matt. I think it's going to be great. And because we know there's some great Sabre fans out there. So we want to get you involved. Even if you can't be here live, share it, listen to it, and give us any feedback. We want to hear from you about anything you want us to discuss or anything of that nature. So I'm going to call the show now, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.